because I want the message to go to the people of Pakistan. Khawateen o Hazrat, मोहतरमा मशाल मलिक साहिबा ने आपके सामने एक एवरेज कश्मीरी फैमिली का नक्शा रखा। वो किस हालात में जिंदगी बसर कर रही है, एक बीवी की कैफियत क्या है, एक माँ पर क्या बीत रही है और वहाँ के माशी हालात क्या है, किन कवानीन का सहारा लेकर इंसानी हुकूक को पामाल किया जा रहा है और दुनिया सब कुछ देखते हुए जानते हुए मसलकन खामोश है और क्यों कर है। उनकी गुफ्तगू में एक अज़्म था, जानते हुए कि नामसाइल हालात हैं, लेकिन जज्बा और फैसला अटल है कि लेके रहेंगे आज़ादी और तोड़ के रहेंगे जंजीरें। ये है खुलासा जो मुशाल की गुफ्तगू में बहसियत वज़ीर ख़ारजा मैंने समझने की कोशिश की। एक रिजॉल्व था, एक डिटर्मिनेशन थी और एक कश्मीरी ख़ानदान की, खातून की और फ़र्द की आवाज़ की तर्जुमानी थी।
Of Kashmiri women which is going on, and she is speaking in many forums in Pakistan and outside Pakistan, international forums, and creating awareness in the international community as what is going on in Kashmir. She is a well-known figure. She has been coming to this university before. But I would also like to say that I am also very proud because she is the daughter of my very dear friend, a great intellectual and professor of economics at Qaid-e-Azam University, Professor Hussein Malik. May I invite Mushaal Mullick to speak on Kashmir crisis, a way forward. You can speak from there if you want to.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. To the Honorable Foreign Minister of Pakistan, to Lieutenant General Naveed Rector to Dr. Ishfaq Hussain, a dear friend of my late father, and gets very emotional when I meet friends of my late father, and Honorable Riaz, Khokhar, former Ambassador of Pakistan. I would like to express my gratefulness and thanks to NUST University for inviting me to speak on the launch of its NIPS Institute of Policy Studies. And before I begin my speech, I would like to give a small introduction of my own personal story. I'm Mushaal Hussein Mullick, a victim of a divided Kashmiri family, a voice of peace, an artist, a poet, a dreamer of liberty, a freedom fighter, a mother, and practically a single parent of a 7-year-old conflicted child, a wife of a man who I married for the past 10 years and have only spent 60 days with him, and today happens to be his birthday, and he is incarcerated in Jammu jail, where he's been kept in solitary confinement, slapped with one of the blackest laws in the world, the Public Safety Act, which is a draconian law. According to that, that law cannot be challenged, no council access for minimum 2 years. And he is in solitary confinement, ladies and gentlemen. But before I commence on the topic of the Kashmir crisis and the way forward, I would like to ask the people, the august gathering sitting over here, all the highly powered, stately people, that if any of you people sitting in the audience have ever experienced one of the following life-threatening experiences ever, such as facing an army curfew for over a month, being stormed with bullets for leading a peaceful struggle, for being showered with pellets for just slightly opening your window pane during search operations in your vicinity, for being mercilessly raped, for locking the doors of your home during crackdown operations, for facing months and months of starvation through economic blockades, where little babies, suckling babies, are dying due to lack of milk supplies and vaccines, where hospitals are being bombed for saving the injured people, where ambulances are shot at for taking away bleeding protesters, where death seems more real than the reality that you people live. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kashmir's reality on a daily basis, and it's called normalcy. Kashmiri people's vocabulary orbits around curfews, crackdowns, custodial killings, search operations, bullets, pellets, funerals of the young being carried out by the elderly, gun salutes, hartals against the countless massacres that go on, and above all, the most sacred, the word azadi. The question is that how can one, or the people sitting in the audience, bring a ray of hope, or the people listening to me, to a nation that has witnessed nothing less than violence, occupation, enforced custodial disappearances, and human rights abuse on a daily basis? About selling the idea of life in today's Kashmir, there seems more dignity in death than in life, because the majority response of the people of Jammu and Kashmir under the Indian occupation is that they are being pushed against the wall to such a level that they are being constantly mocked, humiliated, butchered, raped, maimed for asking for their legitimate right promised according to the United Nations, the right to freedom, which I always say in all my speeches that according to the Universal Human Rights Charter, every human being has a right to honor, dignity, and freedom. Yet the Kashmiri people are maybe invisible for the world, or they've gone missing, or they're some aliens, or the world is blind to see them. But coming forward, like the famous thing about Jammu and Kashmir, for any foreigner or any traveler or any visitor, this land of Jammu and Kashmir throughout the ages has been renamed another name for paradise. It is a place of fascination where only lovers can dwell in boundless joy, where Srinagar's Dal Lake is in the lap of the snow-clad mountains, where wooden carving regal palace-like houseboats float along with the traditional shikaras, where the chinar trees engulf the rapturous beauty of the millions of flowers blossoming, which are carpeting the Mughal gardens, and the floating lilies and blossoms, vegetables blooming inside the water bodies, which add life to the days of the sightseers. Everything appears to be heaven-like, picture perfect, if only one were to talk about Kashmir's natural, exquisite beauty. But ladies and gentlemen, there is a hell living in this heaven, where the devil calls the deadliest shots. This place continues to haunt my people. In all parts of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, a gigantic military footmark is present in the civilian areas, and thousands of graves of unmarked people along with graves of innocent people which have been killed by the Indian bullet. Looks like a region which is a horror story, where barbed wires, concrete bunkers, and Indian forces have been the fastest growing vegetation since the early 90s. Ladies and gentlemen, the New Zealand incident, the Christchurch attack that took place last month, left the whole world literally chilled to the bone, where over 50 people were brutally killed by a terrorist while the people were praying. But people of New Zealand, I say, are lucky. that they have their own police, their own army, their own judiciary, their own prime minister to console them, to provide them protection against any kind of terrorist activities. And just within 10 days of that incident, the government announced an anti-gun law to shun any threat of terrorism against its civilians. But unfortunately, in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, it goes anti-clockwise. It's undeniably an everyday routine, just like having breakfast or just like breathing, that these horrific incidents keep repeating one after the other in such a systematic manner that I fail to keep account of the number of massacres that have taken place in my land. I remember last year, on 25th of May in 2018, in the holy month of Ramadan, during the Friday prayers, when the Jamia mosque in Srinagar, it was full of worshippers and women, children, elderly, all were sitting busy praying, when all of a sudden the Indian army and the police, they started indiscriminately firing pellets and shooter guns at all the worshippers who were unarmed and they were busy praying to Allah Almighty. And I remember the videos of blood splattered everywhere were shown on the internet and everywhere, but it really didn't leave an impact on the world because maybe we're not that important, or maybe the world quite conveniently blinds its eye for its own selective condemnations and selective interests, economic interests with India. So the sole purpose of any kind of military might or terrorism that takes place from the side of the Indian occupation is basically, it is to kill the Kashmir story. They're doing it since ages by banning our political parties, by banning us economically, by banning us legally, by putting communication bans. There's no radio, there's no internet, there are no phone lines working, there's no mobile. Just imagine yourself to be in such a situation, and this is something which we breathe. What a shame it is. So how can my story or the story of my people or the people of Kashmir be heard? And that is the main part of my discussion today. And I would like to present just a few suggestions that I go through on a daily basis, that I experience, that I live and I breathe because of the occupation that I face in my people. So number one, because there are a lot of diplomats sitting over here, we require global pressure, which is the most essential key to long-term stabilization of the entire world, as I say. Because in an era of globalization, global economies, global peace, and global harmony go hand in hand. And Kashmir, the issue of Kashmir being the oldest pending global conflict on the UN agenda, still lies waiting to be accepted or exercised. Secondly, the inclusion of the United Nations in a more active manner. The UN Secretary General, the UN Human Rights Commissioner, and the recent report that was launched last year by the Human Rights Commissioner, in which they demanded a commission against all the gross human rights violations committed by the Indian Army and the Black Laws. And then we need further engagement of all the Security Council members, because any kind of war that erupts, any micro, even a single micro war or a nuclear exchange, if it takes place, God forbid, between India and Pakistan, the whole world can be affected by it, naturally. And then I would assert all of you people sitting here that the Kashmiri people want a dialogue on Kashmir between India and Pakistan, and Kashmir should be on top of its priority. And please, please, any dialogue, I would request the Foreign Minister of Pakistan to also take note of this. And whenever the time comes of reconciliation, I hope it comes soon, that it should be a time-stipulated dialogue. Because since the Shimla agreement till now, over 50 years have passed, I mean, it has literally lost its shelf life. I mean, we have not seen any result come forward, not mostly because of India's intentions of backing out or the blame game. And then just recently, the Pakistani government, during the very tense situation, they released that Indian pilot Abhinandan, which was a very powerful peace gesture coming from Pakistan, but unfortunately it was not responded well from the Indian side, hence a golden opportunity was lost. Thirdly, need to create an atmosphere of respect and dignity for human life by shunning the draconian black laws. that are passed to the puppet assemblies in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir that include TADA, POTA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, Telegraph Act, and many others. And then coming to the heavy economic costs of no peace in the region. Because due to the lack of trust deficit, the entire region has a huge economic cost. And according to the World Bank report last year, a glass half full, says that the trade potential between India and Pakistan stands at $37 billion. But unfortunately, it is a mere $2 billion. And maybe, I think it's even less than that now, probably because of the tense situation. And fifth point, which is very, very crucial and very important, that any kind of dialogue, ladies and gentlemen, between India and Pakistan on Kashmir is totally useless without the key representation of the representatives or the people, the Hurriyat leadership, who are representing the political sentiments of the public of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And just recently, the Indian government, you'll be shocked that though they call themselves the biggest democracy, they have put a ban on all the peaceful political parties of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including my husband's party, JKLF, and Jamaat-e-Islami and other voices. So how can we possibly come to any kind of solution when the voice or the pulse of the people of that land, the heirs of that land, if they're not included? I mean, this is just crazy almost. And then I would also request the demand for the release of all our political prisoners that are languishing all over India in various jails, being tortured, being killed, their families being harassed, they're being slapped with all these black laws. And I would also appeal that my husband, who was poisoned 2 years back and in jail for demanding for the peaceful right of his people, he is right now also in solitary confinement, and his passport has been snatched by the Indian authorities for the past 6.5 years, and I haven't seen him for almost 4.5 years. So from my own personal sufferings, that's my personal request. But yes, we are paying this cost, our family, because it's at the forefront of this freedom struggle. So we have to give hope to our public, to our people, that no matter what happens, we are ready to sacrifice even the last drop of our blood till we attain our right to freedom. And the last point, which is very crucial, because whatever is happening right now, it is not just between India, Pakistan, and the Kashmiris. Because dialogue is the only sane option of controlling the situation right now. But usually if dialogue is not the option, the alternative is war. And in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, as I mentioned earlier, that this is literally, ladies and gentlemen, the place where you're sitting at right now is a nuclear ticking time bomb. And if, God forbid, any small regional nuclear exchange triggers, especially after the war euphoria, the warmongering coming from the Indian side, the whole world will be affected, not just us. This could trigger a global nuclear winter. Imagine yourself in Ice Age, just freezing to death. Global famine. The whole world will face food shortages, starvations, depletion of the ozone layer, more ultraviolet rays. So this is not just us. So let's all wake up. Let's all join hands like global voices and take ownership of our beautiful planet that God has gifted us and stand up before it gets destroyed, God forbid. Because you all are the hope, especially the global world, through which peace can be given a chance before it's too late. And in the end, I would like to present a video of one of the great young voices of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Ali Saifuddin. He has sung this song in Kashmiri, and I'm sure most of you cannot understand that. But pain, human feelings, human emotions, the soul, it transcends all barriers of language, color, creed, religion, borders, line of controls, of everything. Because we're one soul, we're one human being at the end of the day, and we must unite to